Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum. My name is Farhan Ahmed and I'm here with a new video on Python for Excel users. Previously, we have given a brief introduction of Python for Excel user. So this video is going to be the first video of the proper video series. In this video, we will recap the introduction briefly and then proceed with the course outlay. And after the course outlay, we'll start playing around with Python and we'll do some exercises. And I hope it is going to be interesting for you. So let's have a recap of a brief recap of the introduction of Python. Let's start with what Python is. Uh, we previously discussed that uh, Python is a general purpose, high level, dynamically typed and interpreted programming language, which means that its codes are quite similar to English, and therefore it is called general purpose, high level, dynamically typed and interpreted programming language. And it's easier to learn and understand because its codes are similar to English word. For example, for writing something, writing some phrases, we use code print. For enumerating something, we use code enumerate, and so on. So let's talk about the history of Python. Although Python has gained popularity in last few years, uh, however, it has been around since 40 years. Uh, it was developed by a Dutch programmer named Guido van Rossum, and its development, or we can say that it was created somewhere in late 80s or early 90s, because there are two different sources tells us that some sources tells us that it was developed or created in 1989, and some sources tells us that it was developed in 1991. But most of the sources says that it was developed in February 1991. However, there are two different opinions. Uh, why Python is gaining popularities in last few years? Uh, Basically, it is due to its implication in many fields. Uh, and why it is used in many fields, or it has implication in many fields, because of its features. It has many built-in features. It has many libraries, data structures, and data frameworks, which enables it to be used in many fields and for many purposes. If we look at some of the common usage of Python, or common applications of Python, we can see that it can be used in game development, it can be used in software development, it can be used in web application development, it is used in networking, it is used in development of business application, uh, it is used in handling and analyzing big data, and it is used for machine learning and automation. It is also has some implication in civil engineering works. It is being used in developing of AI applications, as earlier said that it is used for machine learning, and that is when it is being used for machine learning, it also has some implication in AI application development, and there are many other uses. So it has a diversified fields of application, and due to its libraries, it is sorry, it is a very powerful tool. Uh, if we look at this course, because this session is designed specifically for Excel users, and Python is such a vast programming language that covering it in a single course is nearly impossible, and specifically for me. if I say, or let's put it other way, it's such a huge and vast programming language that no one, including me, can claim that he can be an expert in Python. Uh, However, a certain level of proficiency can be achieved, and I'm still learning it, and I'm enjoying it, and I hope whatever I'm sharing, it will also be uh, enjoyable for you too, and viewers will also be enjoying this series. So I'm just basically sharing the experience, the enjoyment which I am getting from learning Python, and I hope it is going to be enjoyable for you too. So let's see why Python instead of Excel. Basically, there are few features of Python that makes it stand out in front of Excel, or we can say that it gains advantage or edge over Excel. Uh, One reason is its scalability. We previously discussed that scalability is the ability to handle large amount of data. Uh, when we look at Excel, it is able to handle 1 million rows and 16,000 columns of data. We previously discussed in our introductory session. Uh, so uh, Excel can handle only that much amount of data, whereas when we look at Python, uh, Python can handle much more larger amount of data than Excel can. It can handle tens of millions of rows and thousands and thousands of columns. So it can handle a much more larger amount of data. And if we look at Excel, uh, Excel can handle only that much amount of data, which can be supported by the RAM of the computer system. Whereas Python has a library named DAST, or we can say that DAST data frame. Basically, this DAST data frame enables or allows Python to handle the data which can even be larger than the amount of its RAM. So it's a notable advantage of Python. The second feature that makes it better than Excel is its ability to automate tasks. Uh, Again, its library like NumPy, SciPy, and other libraries enables it to compute much more larger amount of data, analyze much more larger amount of data, much faster and easier. And when we look at Excel, we have to use VBA codes and macros to simplify some tasks. We cannot even say that we can automate tasks. We simplify basically simplify those tasks by using VBA codes and macros, and we design button to perform their task. However, in Excel, in Python, and one more thing, sorry. When we look at VBA and macros, it is application specific because it can only be used in Excel. Whereas when we look at Python, Python has much more easier codes to automate tasks. It has easier code import very large amount of databases from other sources and perform operations on it. So its libraries, its functions enables it to automate tasks, reproduce functions, and tasks much more faster and easier than Excel. Another feature is its functional integrity. Uh, Functional integrity means the ability to import and export different file formats. So when we look at Excel, it is compatible with CSV files. It is compatible with SQL. It is compatible with Excel. So its compatibility with large amount of data formats enables it to import and export data of these file formats very easily and much more faster. So it's another advantage of Python, which gives it an advantage over Excel. And Another feature is its cross-platform compatibility, uh, which means the ability to be compatible with all operating systems or multiple operating systems. When we look at Python, it is compatible with all operating systems. It is compatible with Windows. It is compatible with Mac. It is compatible with Linux. So its cross-platform compatibility is also a notable feature of Python. So this is the brief history of Python. Uh, why we should learn Python? Because of its features, its libraries, which enables its application in diversified fields and makes it a powerful tool. So uh, that's why uh, we should learn Python, and it will increase another tool. We can say that it will enrich us with an alternative tool, which is also an advantage for us. So, if you look at the course outlay is divided into four modules. Module 1 relates to the introduction of Python interface. We will be discussing the installation of Python and its related utilities, and have an idea of interface of Python. In the second module, we will be discussing the basics of data analytics that we perform in Python, that we can perform in Python. And we will also be comparing Python with Excel. In the third module, when we will be discussing the pandas. We will discuss pandas in details in the later chapters, but for an overview or a slight understanding of what pandas are, pandas stands for panel data, and these are data analysis libraries offered by the Python that helps us do most of the tasks that we normally perform in Excel. And the fourth and last module, we will be discussing pivot table. We will be discussing how we can create pivot table charts and graphs in Python. So this will be the course outlay, and we will be discussing them one by one. Let's begin with the installation of Python and Jupyter Notebook. Now, Jupyter Notebook. What is Jupyter Notebook? It is basically a text editor. Those who are familiar with programming or coding knows that every coding applications basically needs a text editor where we write codes and instructions. For example, those who are familiar with HTML or web development, they write code in Notepad and they save the file as HTML to run it. Similarly, Python, it also use text editor, and the best text editor that is used for Python is Jupyter Notebook. There are various other text editors that can also be used, but I'll be using Jupyter Notebook. So let's begin with the installation of Python. We will download Python from the website www.python.org/downloads. This will be a link from where we'll be downloading Python. So let's let's begin with the with downloading the Python. So we will go to the browser and download the Python application. So let's go to the URL www.python.org/download, which is already there. I will click on it, and here we can see the option. Sorry, download the latest version for Windows, and we'll click on download Python 3.10.4, and there we will have option to download the file. So a new window will open that will ask to download the Python file. So although I've already saved it, but I'm doing it again for you. So I'll save it and it will be downloaded. So when the file is downloaded, we'll open it and we'll see an option to run it. So there is an option it's asking always ask before opening this file. So keep it checked and run it. Let's see. So the file is running, and make sure to check the box add Python 3.10 to path, and then click install now. I will not be proceeding further because I've already installed the application. So this will be the procedure. This will be the procedure to install the Python in your system. So I'm not proceeding any further. However, you will click on install now and the file will be installed, and after that you can launch it. So I'll finish here, and so Python is installed. After installing Python, we'll proceed with downloading the Jupyter notebook from the website www.anaconda.com. We already discussed that every programming application needs a text editor where we write code. So this is the text editor where we will be writing and running codes. So we'll go to anaconda.com and download the Jupyter notebook. So let's type www.anaconda.com. It's already there. So I'll click on it and the page will be opened. Now I scroll down. So to download Anaconda Jupyter notebook from anaconda.com, we are on the website anaconda.com. We will be scrolling down to see getting started option or get started option. Here we can see get started. We'll click on it. Here we'll see two options: request an Anaconda demo or download Anaconda installer. So we'll click on it, download Anaconda installers, and here we can see Anaconda distribution options. When we'll scroll down, it will give us option to download for Windows, whether it's 64-bit Windows or 32-bit Windows, whichever is applicable for us, we'll be downloading it. So I'll be clicking on 64-bit installer, and here I have the option to install it. I'll save it, and depending upon the size of the file and your internet speed, it will take some time to download the file. So Let's wait for some time so the download is completed. So we can see that we are done with the installation of Anaconda. Now we'll open it and here you'll see installation wizard. We'll run this and it's the setup, agree, and just me, click on next, and here's the path, click on next. Okay, since I've already installed Anaconda, so I won't be proceeding further, but you can complete this installation wizard so that Anaconda is installed in your system. So I won't be proceeding further and closing it here. So till now we are done with installation of Jupyter and sorry, installation of Python and installation of Anaconda nucleus. Basically, this is Anaconda nucleus in which we'll find various utilities, and amongst those utilities there is Jupyter Notebook. So let's proceed. Now we'll be launching the Anaconda nucleus and see what utilities are installed in our system. Okay, up till now we are done with the installation of Python and Jupyter Notebook or Anaconda nucleus. Now we'll launch Anaconda nucleus to open Jupyter Notebook, and to open Anaconda nucleus we'll go to Windows and type Anaconda, and here we can see application. We'll open it. Command prompt will pop up twice or thrice before Anaconda nucleus is opened, so we shouldn't be worried about this. Let's go to desktop again, and here we can see Anaconda nucleus in the taskbar. We'll open it, and here we can see the utilities that are installed with the Anaconda nucleus. We can also see Jupyter Notebook. Now we'll launch the Jupyter Notebook. It will take some time. So this is the directory, and in order to open a new Jupyter Notebook file, we will click on New and open with Python 3. Here, the Jupyter Notebook is now opened. Now, let's see the interface of the Jupyter Notebook. We'll go back to Jupyter Notebook. here, and this is what Jupyter Notebook looks like. It's the toolbar where there are different options to open new file, save new file, edit, view, insert. These are the cells, and this is what Jupyter Notebook looks like. This is the cell, and later on we will see what are cell modes and cell types. So this is Jupyter Notebook. Jupyter Notebook, as earlier discussed, it is a text editor, and beside being a text editor, it is an open source web application that allows user to create and share documents that contain text, quotations, visualization, and live codes. Uh, but beside being a typical text editor, in Jupyter Notebook, we can also perform sorting, cleaning, transforming, and visualization of data and data analysis. It is widely used in machine learning and data science, as was discussed earlier in the introduction. Uh, in Jupyter Notebook, we can also see cell option, kernel option, widgets, and these are some different options which we usually don't find in other spreadsheet application or other text editors. What kernel is? Kernel is basically a computational engine that execute codes. The codes that we write in these cells, kernel execute them at the back end. When we open Jupyter Notebook, kernel is also automatically launched, and if we hang up in any code or application slowdown, we can also interrupt the kernel if we need to do so, or application takes too long to run a code. So this is the Jupyter Notebook interface. So this is the interface of Jupyter Notebook. Now let's have an understanding of cell types and cell modes in Jupyter Notebook. Uh, when we open a Jupyter Notebook file, the cells are by default in command mode. And how we know that the cell is in command mode? When the left line that we can see in the cell is in blue color, it indicates that the cell is in command mode. When we click inside the cell, the line becomes green, which indicates that the cell is in edit mode. So when we press escape, the cell again becomes blue, cell line becomes blue, which indicates that the cell is now in command mode. So when we are in command mode in Jupyter Notebook, we can do things that are outside the scope of the cell. That is the options that we can see in the toolbar. We can perform them when the cell is in command mode. We can also use shortkeys in command mode. For example, if you want to see the list of shortkeys in command mode, we press H, and this is the list of the shortkeys in Jupyter Notebook. There we can see all the shortkeys that we can apply select and apply in Jupyter Notebook. We can also apply other shortkeys when the cell is in command mode in Jupyter Notebook. For example, in order to add a new cell below the current cell, the current cell is in command mode, we press B. Here we get another cell below the current cell, and this cell is in command mode because the line of the cell is blue in color. So if you press enter when the cell is in command mode, when you press enter, the cell line will turn green, which shows that now the cell is in edit mode. So in order to convert the cell from command mode to edit mode, enter is the short key. And in order to return to command mode, we press escape, and now the cell is in again command mode. So these are the shortkeys, few shortkeys that we discussed, and we converted the cell from command mode to edit mode by pressing enter, and by pressing escape, we revert back to command mode. So these are the cell modes. When the cell is in edit mode, we can perform all the actions that are in the context of the cell. For example, we can write commands when the cell is in edit mode. We can introduce any text and we can run them. And here's the button from which we can run, or the short key to run any command or instruction is control enter. So for example, here I write anything, for example, uh, I write 3 plus 6, and when I press enter, you can see that the cell is in uh, edit mode. So by pressing enter, uh, new line will be added in the cell. So in order to run this command, I will press control and enter, and here I can see the output 9. So and we can see the cell is in again command mode. When I click on the cell is now again in edit mode, and I can perform changes in the cell or modify the command which I have already given. So I can write any text in edit mode. For example, let's say I have to write my own name. In order to introduce any text in the cell, I have to use quotes, whether it be single quote or double quote. In order to introduce any text, uh, we have to use quotes. So let's write my name in single quote. I'm using single quote first, and when I press Control and Enter to run this, I will see uh, my name here. I can click on it. I can edit it again. Now let's write it my name again with double quotes. And when I run this again, I can see my name. So when I introduce any text in a cell with single quote or double quote, the output will always be in apostrophe, or it will appear in single quote, single quotes. So this is some understanding of cell modes, what we can do when the cell is in command mode and what we can do when the cell is in edit mode. Uh, Note that the cell is in edit mode. Short keys will not be working when the cell is in edit mode. For example, previously we press B to introduce a new cell below the current cell. Now when the cell is in edit mode, when I press B, it will be treated as a text. We previously pressed H to see the list of short key, but now when the cell is in edit mode, I will press H and it will appear as a text. So when the cell is in edit mode, it will only perform the actions that are within the scope of the cell. Within the scope of the cell means we can introduce text, we can write codes, but we cannot perform functions that are outside the scope of the cells. For example, save file, use short keys, and other things that we can do when the cell is in command mode. For example, when the cell is in edit mode, when you press enter, instead of converting cell from command mode to edit mode, enter will introduce a new line within the cell. Similarly, when we press H, it will be displayed as a character. When we press B, it will be displayed as a character. So these are the modes, cell modes in kernel in Jupyter Notebook. So when we press escape, the cell is now again in command mode, and now when we press H, list of short keys will appear. And similarly, when we press B, a new cell will appear below the current cell. So these are the difference between command mode and edit mode. Now let's look into the cell types in Jupyter Notebook. There are mainly three main cell types in Jupyter Notebook. It's code, markdown, and raw NB converter. Uh, we can also see cell types here, and we can drop down to see other cell types. It's heading raw NB converter, markdown, and code, but mainly there are three cell types, and from these three cell types, only two cell types will be used mostly in Jupyter Notebook. So let's see what these cell types means. Code cell means that we can introduce codes in we can introduce to type codes in cell. It should be noted that in order to write codes in cell, we have to be the cell should be in edit mode. The cell have to be in edit mode. So cell code cells are basically used to introduce codes in the cell and run commands. And we should be in edit mode in order to introduce codes in cells. And in order to run these codes, we have to press Control and Enter, or just click on this run key, run button, sorry. So markdown type, the other type is markdown type, and markdown cell is used to introduce uh, strings. Strings are basically characters or text which we want to appear as it is. For example, our name, some sentence, some phrases which we want to appear as it is. So markdown cell is used to introduce uh, text in the cells. It can be heading, it can be subheading, it can be text, it can be name or anything. So Uh, if you are in command mode, you can change the cell type uh, from code to markdown by pressing N key, which is the short key. Now you can see that when you pressed N key, the IN is disappeared from the left side of the cell, which means that the cell is now markdown cell, and we can also see it here. It's appearing markdown, and whatever which we will be writing in this cell will be treated as simple text, and we cannot introduce codes in these cells when the cell is markdown cell. So uh, when the cell is in edit mode, we can convert the cell from code cell to markdown cell by pressing M. And in order to revert back to code cell, we press Y key. Sorry, the cell was in edit mode, therefore Y appeared as a text instead of working as a short key. So we have to be in command mode, and in order to go back to command mode, we have to press escape key. Now the cell line is in blue. Now when we press Y key, the cell is now again in code mode as IN appears on the left side of the cell. And here we can also see the cell type, which is code cell. The current cell is now a code cell. So this is the cell type. And if you are in command mode, you can change the cell type from code to markdown by pressing M, as we discussed earlier. And we can introduce headings, we can introduce subheading when the cell is in markdown mode. So it's markdown mode, and now when in order to introduce a heading, we have to use hash key. Hash key, and whatever we write, for example, to introduce a heading, we first have to be in edit mode. The cell have to be in edit mode, and in order to introduce a heading, we have to use a hash sign before the heading. So we will press hash, and let's give the file heading my first Jupyter notebook file. It's quite a long name, but let's go with it. When we run this by pressing this button or by pressing Control and Enter, now we'll see that it's an heading. Now come to the cell below. When we clicked on the cell, it's now in edit mode as the line is green. And let's give a subheading. Now let's give a subheading. In order to give subheading, we have to use double hash sign. So let's use double hash sign. Hash sign is also used to introduce comments in the cell, that whatever we are doing in the cell, we can give comment. Now, here I forgot something. I forgot to convert the cell to markdown mode in order to write subheading, as I can see that IN is appearing before the cell. So it's not a markdown cell, it's a code cell. So in order to convert it into markdown cell, I will press escape key. The cell is now in command mode, and now I can use short key M to convert this cell into markdown cell. Now the cell is markdown cell. I will click on the cell to bring the cell in edit mode as the line is now green, and I have already introduced double hash sign to introduce a subheading. Now let's say my subheading be my first project. Let's it be the subheading. Now when I run this by pressing Control Enter, This is my subheading. Now I can see that the main heading is a bit in larger font, and the subheading is a bit smaller than the main heading. Similarly, I can introduce any text. I can introduce any text in the cell when it's in markdown mode. For example, let's introduce my own name. I will type single quote or double quote, whatever I use, or I will just type my name, Farhan, and I'll press enter. So this is the main heading, this is the subheading, and this is the text I introduced. Uh, when the cell was in code mode, I had to use double quotes or single quotes in order to introduce a string or a text. For example, here I can see in the first cell, you can see that the cell was in code mode as IN was appearing before the cell. And in order to introduce my name, I had to use double quotes or single quotes as I showed you earlier. But when the cell is in markdown mode, I don't have to use single quote or double quote in order to introduce any text. So here we learned two cell types, code type or code cell, and markdown type or markdown cell. The third type is raw NB converter, as it's we can see raw NB converter. Uh, Raw NB converter is a cell type or is a cell, a type of a cell, which is never loaded by the kernel. Kernel, I earlier said, it's a computational engine, and it never loads raw NB converter type of cell. So we won't be using raw NB converter cells in our working. And if we try to convert the cell type to raw NB converter, it will never be emulated by the converter, and it's just look like a plain cell. So we won't be using raw NB converter in our course. We will mostly be using code cells and markdown cells. So this was the introduction to cell types, and now look at some commonly used short keys in Jupyter Notebook or Python. These are the commonly used short keys, and as I earlier said, in order to use short key, the cell mode should be in command mode, and in order to introduce any code or any text, the cell mode should be in edit mode. So in order to use short keys, the cell mode should be in command mode. So these are some short keys. F key, F short key allows us to find a word in a cell and then replace it with another word. As in Excel we usually do, we use Control F and then we find and replace any phrase or text from the Excel or Word file. Similarly, Control Enter, as I earlier said, Control plus Enter is used to run the codes or commands. Similarly, Shift plus Enter, it runs and inserts new cell below the and similarly B also inserts new cell. But the difference between the short key B and Shift plus Enter is that Shift plus Enter runs the previous cell, but B does not runs the previous cell. It introduces a new cell without running the code in the previous cell or current cell. Similarly, M, as I discussed earlier, it is used to convert the cell type from code cell to markdown cell. And Y key, it is used to revert back from markdown cell to code cell or convert cell type from markdown cell to code cell. Similarly, numbers are used to change the font size of the headings or text. We click on the cell heading and press 1. The font size will be decreased and hash sign will appear before the heading. Press 2, the font size will be decreased further and 2 hash signs will appear before the title or heading. Single hash sign shows the biggest font size, as I earlier discussed. Main heading, in order to introduce main heading when the cell is in markdown mode, we use single hash sign, and to introduce subheading, we use double hash sign. So the single hash sign shows the biggest font size. Where is my cursor here? Here's my cursor. Now A is the short key to introduce a new cell above the current cell. B, earlier discussed, it is used to introduce a new cell below the current cell. X, where is my cursor? Where is my cursor here? X is used, X short key is used to cut the current cell. V short key is used to paste the cut cell below the current cell, and shift plus V paste the cut cell above the current cell. Double D is used to delete the current cell or the cell we have selected. Z sign is used, Z short key is used to undo the last changes we did in our working. Control S is used to save the file in the Jupyter notebook or save the changes in the Jupyter notebook files. You press Control plus Enter, it says checkpoint created. It means that whatever the time was when you press the Control S, it saved the changes up to that point of time and created it as a checkpoint. So later on, when you want to revert back, you can revert back to that checkpoint. And H short key, earlier discussed, it is used to see the shortcuts that are used in Jupyter Notebook. So these are some common shortkeys that are used in Jupyter Notebook. Now, let's get started with the basics of data analysis, and let's play around the Jupyter Notebook. So let's come to Jupyter Notebook and now press B to introduce a new cell below the current cell. As earlier discussed, B is the short key to introduce a new cell. B is the short key to introduce a new cell below the current cell, and the cell is in code. The cell type is code and the cell mode is command mode. So as I earlier said, that in order to introduce codes or give commands, the cell has to be in edit mode. So let's press enter to convert the cell mode from command mode to edit mode. And we can typically start by just typing a simple message. For example, if I want to write my name, I earlier did it by just using single quotes and double quotes. Let's repeat that again. Double quote and my name. Sorry, Farhan. Run this by pressing Control and Enter. And here it's Farhan. Introduce a new cell. Now do the same thing by using single quotes. Single quote. And now again my name. And then run this by pressing Control and Enter. Similar, I got my name again. And there is also a code to write simple messages or text. So uh, I wrote my name using single quotes and double quotes. Now there is also a code which is used to introduce strings, and that code is print. So let's introduce a new cell below the current cell by pressing short key uh, B, and now use print command, print code, sorry. And remember that codes are case sensitive, so there is no capital letter in codes. So we write print and parenthesis, and in double quotes, I will write my name, Farhan. Sorry. So when I run this by pressing Control and Enter, I'll get my name. I can also introduce comments in the cell I am working on by using single hash sign. For example, let's say what I did in this cell, I wrote my name by using a print code. So I can edit this cell again. I'll press enter and to introduce the new line in the current cell. And above this, I will give the comment. Uh, I will writing my name. So when I run this, the output will be same, but now the cell contains the comment which defines what I am doing in the current cell. So this is my name. I wrote my name using print code. Uh, as earlier did, uh, I wrote my name without using any code by using just double quotes and single quotes. So uh, whatever we write in single quotes or double quotes, it is treated as a string. And here I forgot to type H in my name. So I did the correction now and run this again. Now this is my correct name. So up till now we discussed cell modes, cell types. We saw the interface of Jupyter Notebook, and we played around Jupyter Notebook. We switched between code cells and markdown cells. We discussed what we can do in code cells, what we can do in markdown cells. We also discussed cell modes. Uh, we discussed what we can do in command mode. We discussed what we can do in edit mode. And we also discussed that we should be in edit mode in order to introduce any codes or introduce text or codes in the cells and run them. Uh, we also discussed some commonly used shortkeys in Jupyter Notebook. Uh, we also see that we can add comments by adding single hash sign when the cell is code cell, and when the cell is markdown cell, we can use single hash sign to give heading. We can use double hash sign to give subheading, and we can just type the text in order to introduce text when the cell is markdown cell. We can see that functions are in different colors. We can see that the strings appears in red color. We can see that comment is in blue color. The functions are in green color. And one thing that we should note that function always uses parenthesis sign to perform the function which we are doing. So this was the introduction of Jupyter Notebook, cell modes and cell types. Now let's understand the data types. What's this? Okay, it's blank. Let's do it again. Okay, we have done this. We have done this. We discussed cell types and cell modes. We discussed cell types in detail. We discussed shortkeys and started some playing around with Jupyter Notebook and data analysis. Now let's understand cell types. Every value in Python is an object, and an object has different types. For example, whatever we type in the cell in Jupyter Notebook, it is an object, and the object may have different types. For example, if the object is a number and it's a whole number, it will be an integer. If it's a number that contains a fraction or decimal, then it's float, or the object type or data type is float. And another data type is Boolean, that gives true and false. And plain text or characters that we want to appear as it is are strings. And as we discussed, that strings in Python appears in red color. So let's begin with the data types. There are basically 4 data types as we saw here. Integers are basically whole numbers. For example, 1, 2, 3, 4 that appears without a fraction or that are written without a fraction. Floats are basically numbers that contains decimal points or that appear that are with fractions. For example, 2.3, 5.4, 1.2, and so on. Booleans are basically true or false values, and when we run Boolean, data type Boolean, the data type that returns is bool. And the last data type is strings. Strings earlier discussed, these are quotes or characters, phrases, names, whatever that appears as it is or that we want to appear as it is. So let's see what we can do or how we can find data types. In order to find the type of the data in the cell, there is a code which is type. Sorry, I again did not converted the cell mode in edit mode. So I'll press enter to convert the cell mode in edit mode, and the code which is used to find the type of the data which is in the current cell is type, and we'll use parentheses. And for example, I want to to know the type of my name, for example, Farhan. When I'll press enter, it will return str, which states that my name is a string, or the object that is my name. The type of the object is a string. Let's press B to add another cell below. And now let's do the same thing with a number, and with a whole number. Let's type, open parenthesis, and just type 1 or any number which is a whole number. When I press Control and Enter to run this, it returns int, which stands for integer, and it says that 5 is a integer, or the object which is in the cell is an integer. Similarly, let's add another cell and now try to use a float. I again bring the cell in edit mode by pressing enter, or just by clicking in the inside the cell. I again use the type code, open parenthesis, and this time I will type 2.3. And when I run this by pressing Control and Enters, it returns float, which says that the data type in this cell is a float. And now, Boolean. Boolean are basically true and false values. Let's add another cell below. And now use the same, sorry, I did not converted the cell mode to edit mode. Now I press enter or clicked on the cell to convert the cell, to bring the cell mode into edit mode. And now I type the code type, and then now I will write true inside the parenthesis, or I'll type false, whatever it is. And now when I run this by pressing Control and Enter, sorry, I did not use sorry, the spelling of type is wrong, so I should correct this, type. And now when I run this, let's type. Now whatever I am writing inside the parenthesis, the first letter should be capital. Now when I run this, I'll get the correct answer, that is bool, which says that the data type inside this cell is a Boolean. So this was the data types which are used in Jupyter Notebook. That's enough for now. In the next lecture, we will be proceeding further with few more few more features of Jupyter Notebook. We'll be discussing methods that are used in Jupyter Notebook. We'll be discussing variables, how we can define variables. We'll be discussing list and what we can do with list, how we can play around with list, how we can add or remove elements from list, and so on. So stay tuned. Jupyter Notebook. There is a lot more to learn in Jupyter Notebook, and Python is going to bite you, and it's going to be addiction. So let's end this for now. See you again with our next lecture. Allah Hafiz.